So, okay, great. Great to be here, a real honor to be participating in the Spotlight. It's my first visit to Brazil, and I hope this is not going to be my last one. Look forward to coming back again. Just a couple of points that I want to make about my background, not so much to speak about myself, but also to explain where my views have been shaped. For the past about 15 years, I've been advising governments on the development of new nuclear projects. So I've seen the challenges and the issues that the governments have faced. But also, for the past few years, I've been advising financial institutions, commercial banks, export credit agencies on developing their policies and their approach to nuclear. And it was a eye-opening experience because I see people that are in the financial markets, how they look at our industry and what we can do to change their perceptions and to make an effective partnership and collaboration. So the things that I want to talk to you about is very much like setting up objectives when we're developing new nuclear. The issue of government support, which I still think is fundamental. Talk a little bit about risk and risk allocation and how do we manage and mitigate risk. But also I want to touch a little bit upon SMR because I know it's a very hot topic, but there's some special issues that I would like to discuss about that. And then how to approach and bring in investors. So first of all, when you're developing a nuclear program, what I find really important is to develop very, very clear objectives. And first of all, the number one objective you have to have is establishing a long-term relationship and partnership. Just as Milk was saying before, there are no winners or losers. You cannot push risk. What you're doing, you're developing a partnership. It's going to be a long-lasting partnership that can go up to 100 years. So this should be one of the clear objectives. A reasonable and achievable project schedule and budget. Sometimes, many times, well, everybody in the industry is guilty of pronouncing, we're going to start building, we're going to have electricity on the grid by 2020, 2021. We all know it's unrealistic, so we have to stick to realistic schedules and budgets. Complying with regulatory obligations, dealing with your regulator in an effective manner. And the last one is a very important one, because sometimes we give mixed messages. Question is, when you're building a new nuclear power plant, is your objective to have electricity on the grid? If you're going to do that, you can structure it in a certain way, minimize the construction risk, replicating what you've done before. But if your objective is to develop a local industry, local jobs, that is a completely different approach. So understanding what that objective is going to help you formulate the way that you're going to put your project together. But government support, I think it is essential. The reason for that is that many of the benefits of nuclear energy are sovereign in nature. And what do I mean by sovereign? Energy security, energy diversification, climate change, industrial development, promoting higher education, highly trained workforces, promoting research and development. These are all advantages that are very hard to quantify within the projects, the financing of the project. They are sovereign, they are for the entire country, so the benefit has to be for the government, for the country, so the support has to come from the country as well. So only governments can properly value these benefits. And experience really shows that no nuclear project will go ahead without significant host government involvement. Now, that involvement doesn't have to be in a certain way. There could be many ways that you can do that. You can have a long-term power purchase agreements, we can have sovereign investments and guarantees, we can have equity participation, loan guarantees. There's many ways, but government support is very essential. However, purely relying on government funding is also dangerous. People get to start becoming, you're not disciplined in your approach, and we should see government funding and support as being a bridge to private support and private development. So one thing that we like doing when we're looking at new nuclear projects is to analyze the project from a project finance point of view, a non-recourse project finance point of view, which means that you look at the risk, you try to understand it, based on the idea that somehow you, the investor, is going to get your money back only from the assets of the project and from the electricity that's going to be produced from the plant. It's not that we're going to actually finance them using project finance technology, but we will understand the issues, we'll understand the risks, and we're going to be able to have a much more manageable and better risk allocation. So sometimes we need to go back to basics. And I really like this slide because it comes from real life. I'll give you a short story here. It was about 7 years ago. We're having a discussion with a major commercial bank who had been asked to look at the development of new nuclear and to finance new nuclear. So we had a lot of discussions, we talked to them about the industry, and then at some point he said, listen, this is all too complicated for us. Can we go back to basics? And here are the questions that I need to be able to answer in order to go to my board of directors. Does the country, this is for a foreign project, does the country need a nuclear power plant? What does that mean? Do they need the electricity? Is this something that they have to do, or is this some kind of vanity project that somebody wants to have? Do you want to have a nuclear power plant? What does that mean? Public acceptance that Kieran was talking before about. Yes, you want to have a nuclear power plant. Does your public want that? Is this something that's supported from the entire community? Can you afford it? How are you going to pay for it? Because sometimes we forget about the fundamental is how much money is it going to cost? Where's the revenue stream going to go? In the end of the day, this has to make financial sense for it to work. Can you manage and support it? Once you answer those, you can go into the more details of it. How will you build it? How will you operate and generate the power? How will you maintain it in the long term and continue to generate the power? How will you decommission it? So we started from these questions, literally at this level, and we started breaking down, starting to answering all the questions. We ended up with a 35-page spreadsheet, but started from these fundamentals. So from the investor point of view, how do investors look at nuclear? They look at two major issues. Financial risk, which basically says, will I get my money back? And a reasonable investment rate of return. And reputational risk, which is a big challenge. Financial risk is driven primarily by historical current experience of project delay and cost overruns. This is something that we're just going to have to fix. Long-term regulatory and power market uncertainty. Need for long-term human resources development. Significant amount of finance and long development and construction periods. And of course the issue of nuclear liability, which is always a big challenge for any project. Reputational risk. Social perceptions associated with nuclear. Political risk and public acceptance issues. Post-Fukushima environment and nuclear safety concerns. Nuclear non-proliferation. Radioactive waste management disposal, as well as historical current experience of project delay and cost overruns. This is an important point because for a lot of the investors and a lot of the banks, when they look at project and cost overruns, it's not just the issue of financial risk, but nobody wants to be associated with a project that's going to be delayed. Even if eventually you do get your money back, it looks bad for everybody, and nobody wants to be associated with that. So it's a reputational issue when you have delays and cost overruns. So this is something that I say what should be, but not always is the easy part, because we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. I'm not going to get into all the details because I know we have, we're running late a little bit today, but one thing that I want to talk about is the point that Milt brought up before, is about the collaboration. There is no such thing as having a failure, a contractor that fails and you as the owner being successful. This is either win together or you're going to fail together. So the importance of having proper vendor management, a vendor that knows how to deliver a project, an integrated project delivery team with key personnel that has experience and recent experience in building new nuclear power projects. But at the same time, equally as important is the owner management. The owner has to be there. You have to manage their vendor. This is their project. As Milt was saying, you own this. You're going to have to develop this no matter what your contract says and which risk allocation. In the end of the day, this is your project. So the collaboration between the two, though, is very important. And one of the people that I respect in this industry the most, who's built nuclear power plants all over the world, Ken Petronik, he uses this expression, talks about owner, that you want the project to be vendor implemented with hands-off leadership by the owner. So the leadership has to come from the owner, but it has to be hands-off, which means let the vendor do what they know how to do well. Don't interfere with their job, but actually lead them into the right solutions. And then, other issues, of course, is regulatory process and interface and how that's going to work. host government and export government supporting structures, which are very important, and human resources development, which is a long lead item you have to start addressing from the very, very beginning of your project. Just a point that I just wanted to make about SMRs. We hear a lot about SMRs and lower cap financing needed, and there seems to be a little bit of a, oh, this is going to be an easy thing to do and an easy thing to finance. Well, again, some thoughts about this. First of all, there are some key challenges on SMRs. First of all, we're facing on all of them first of a kind risk, and that is a massive risk for any investor that's going to be looking at this. You're not going to have a reference plan at this stage. You're going to have an untested regulatory structure and licensing risk regime that you just don't know how it's going to look. And other challenges that are no different than existing light water reactors. Reputational, completion risk, nuclear liability, but without having the benefits of the economy of scale. Now, there are some key benefits that come with the SMRs. Shorter construction period, lower costs, simpler and enhanced safety passive systems, can be built in series, can allow you to do phased financing, create the first project, then you start building with the revenue that you get from the first one, you start building a remaining modules. So you can have, it's easier for grids, for dealing with the grid suitability sometimes, and other applications such as desalination and mining that are more important. But, sorry. Can we go back to the presentation? Yes, thank you. So what does this mean? Will SMRs be easier to finance, develop? And I think at this point, the answer is not really. We're going to have to do a lot of work in order to develop that. But do they present a unique first mover opportunity? And I think that's absolutely the case. And I think the way that you can model this is to create a structure whereby governments support this upfront, the development of the first projects, the demonstration projects, and then slowly start reducing their role in order for private investment to come in. So a few just general remarks about bringing in investors. First of all, sometimes I've seen projects where there's a lot of discussion about the contracts, the EPC contract, the technology selection, and then people say, okay, we're gonna have to finance this, let's go talk to the bankers at this point. Well, that's too late. You have to bring in the investors from the very early on. You have to explain to them what is that you're doing. You have to get their input to understand what they can and cannot finance. The other thing that you have to do is to speak in plain terms. You know, sometimes as an industry, because we're technology driven, we use strange terms that just confuse people and scare people. So, you know, when you go to a banker, you talk to them about spent fuel, or you talk to them about, you know, small modular reactors. These are just terms that they're not familiar with. So you have to speak to them in a very, very plain way. Developing solutions on lessons learned. We hear about, oh, this project was delayed, this project went wrong. Question is, what have you learned from that, and how are you gonna do, what are you gonna do not to repeat the same mistakes? So, you know, sometimes, you know, there's an issue of terminology as well, because you have, as engineers sometimes, as developers, we're very much, you know, very proud of what we're doing. But at the same time, when you're going to a banker and you talk to them about your latest technology, which you might be saying is something very positive, the banker doesn't like that. They hear and they understand first of a kind risk. You talk about a proven safety record, the bank thinks about Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. When an industry talks about a consortium, the bank thinks about, well, this is going to be about internal disputes. When the industry says about construction schedule, the bank worries about historical delays and cost overruns. And the point about these points, this slide, is that we speak in a certain way. We have to start understanding how the investors and the bankers speak, and they speak the language of money and the language of risk. So we're talking about nuclear liability. Gaps and inconsistencies in nuclear liability can be a deal breaker for a lot of banks. We talk about peaceful use. They think about non-proliferation issues. Localization, we talk about supply chain risk. When you talk about a highly regulated industry, the bank understands regulatory risk. So again, try to think about how your audience is thinking and not how you are thinking of things. And this is just an overview that I see that sometimes each of the stakeholders has their own view of risk, but the project is somewhere in the middle. For these projects to really go forward, everybody has to get their risk inside the project, so we can have a place where everybody is comfortable, take some risk, accept some risk, and work as a partner. That's it. Thank you very much.